Good morning. This week's service is a rebroadcast of an earlier service. It is particularly timely as our congregation begins the Widening the Circle of Concern Study Action program, addressing the anti-oppression work we need to undertake as individuals and as a congregation. I hope you enjoy it. Good morning and welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. We are pleased to be able to offer you the safety of in-home worship every Sunday until the danger from COVID-19 is past. Or you can watch and listen at any time if you choose during the week on our website, on Facebook, or on YouTube. Our board of directors voted again in July to continue all services online until things in Tarrant County improve. There are several social, business, and meetings you are free to attend as well on Zoom or Google platforms. Look in your Courier, the monthly newsletter which came out this morning, or your weekly updates for links to any of these. The service this morning is about our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's titled, Starting from a Lie. More about that as the service progresses. And I'm joined this morning by our pianist, Mikhail Berestnev, our song leader, Raneel Baker, and the recording crew of Guy Thornton, Julie Hevelone, and Patrick Gutierrez, without whom we could not manage this virtual togetherness. So sit back wherever you are and let us begin our worship with music. Misha? Let us wake up, not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and its wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality, that not all in our world have what we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are a part. We must stay woke, in the words of our friends and colleagues involved in Black Lives Matter, working every day for racial justice in our country. Let us wake up. Let us stay awake. Let us stay woke. Please join me in singing our opening hymn, number 194, Faith is a Forest, led by Renee Baker.
Sights can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life, may this thread I weave, strength and commitment to all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Fortune and famine ride the swift winds of chance. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Web of life, may this thread I weave, mingle compassion with all I believe. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say.
Please join me in the chalice lighting with the words that are printed on the screen. May the light of truth illumine our minds. May the spark of love set our hearts on fire. May the flame of freedom burn brightly within us, now and always. And do join me in saying our covenant that we repeat every Sunday morning. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. I have 3 questions this morning that I'll be responding to. The first is, how can we seek truth if we don't recognize the lies we've been taught? The second is, can we handle the truth? And the third, is there meaning without truth? And I'll let you ponder those questions for a few minutes. I invite you to join us on Tuesday evening at 7 to let's talk about it, and you can tell me what your responses to those questions are. But now we have a story for all ages. It's called It's Not What You Believe, but How You Hold It. Babies don't believe in anything. Babies aren't born Buddhists or Baptists or believers of any sort. But soon after we arrive in the world, we start to gather ideas from those around us. We pick up beliefs and ideas about people and animals and our families. We collect ideas about stars and comets and how it all got started. We accumulate beliefs about good and bad, right and wrong, what's healthy and unhealthy, and what is important in life. And all of these beliefs, which we get from our parents and our playmates, from the television, our teachers, our books, from Sunday school, they all go into a belief bag, like this. Many religions define themselves by what they believe or what's inside their bag. Christians, for instance, believe that Jesus is God, and they put that in their bag. Muslims have a god named Allah in their bag, and some bags fall off the chalice, off the chancel. And Buddhists believe in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Unitarian Universalists don't have just one set of beliefs. What makes us different is the way that we Unitarian Universalists carry our beliefs, because there are different ways in holding your belief bag. For example, some people hold their bags like this. They clutch it close and they make sure that the top is tightly sealed because they don't want their beliefs exposed to any new ideas that could threaten what's already inside. They've got their world wrapped up in a nice, tidy package, and because their bag is all closed up and no new ideas can get in or old ideas examined, we call those people closed-minded. And some people, just the opposite. They don't pay much attention to all that goes into their bag. One idea is just as good as another, and if folks believe it or not, they can read it on the internet or hear it on talk radio, then it must be true. It's in there. Because they carry their bags in such a sloppy manner and ideas fall in and out willy-nilly, we call these people sloppy thinkers. And then there are people who carry their bags like a club they use to hit other people. What's inside their bag may sound very nice and sweet. For instance, I believe in peace and kindness and the golden rules. But they use their bag like a weapon. You don't believe in peace, you nasty person. Shame on you. None of these is the Unitarian Universalist way. Instead, we carry our bags like this, with the top open so that new ideas and experiences can get inside and old beliefs can be re-examined and removed if they need to be. We carry our bags in front of us so that we can see and examine what goes in, to be sure it makes sense and fits with other things that we know, and also so that we can see what our neighbors think and share our thoughts with other people. Above all, we never use our beliefs to beat up or bully other people. And that's what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. The next time somebody asks you what do the people in your church believe, you can tell them, for Unitarian Universalists, it is less important what you believe than how you hold your beliefs. It's how you acquire them from study and experience, how you share them, allowing others to agree or disagree, and above all, how you use them for the good of all that counts. Thanks to Gary Kowalski for that lovely story. My topic this morning starts with our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I think many seekers come to the Unitarian Universalist Church looking for just that, truth and meaning. I know I did. We come questioning what we had been taught, the experiences that didn't line up against the truths we had been given. Much of what I questioned came out of Sunday school, things like miracles, virgin births, going to hell if your bag didn't hold the right beliefs. I used to imagine God as a tall man in a white lab coat looking out at me through a one-way cloud. He could see me, but I couldn't see him. It seemed very rude and intrusive. I began to doubt all things that I got taught at Sunday school until I was told there was a place I could hold my belief bag openly and ask questions about my doubts and what went into the bag. But you know, it never occurred to me to question the lies I was told in the school I attended during the week. After all, there were books there and professional teachers who my parents suggested I'd better pay attention to. What a disappointment to realize much later in my life that we had all been massively lied to when it came to the history of this country. You know what I'm talking about, that George Washington had wooden teeth. He didn't have wooden teeth. Paul Revere rode through the streets of Concord screaming, "The British are coming." That was a lie. He never reached Concord, and he was only a small cog in the warning system that included several other men riding on horses and screaming, "The British are coming." But then it got worse when we finally found out that Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Well, he never even set foot on North American soil or made it past the Caribbean, whose inhabitants he terrorized, brutalized, and enslaved. Some hero, huh? Columbus was not even aware that he had discovered a new continent. He thought he was in India, hence our Native Americans referred to as Indians. And how's this for brazen lies? America gave the world democracy. The common schoolhouse lesson that America invented democracy would be news to the Greeks, who introduced democratia, or direct rule by the people, which included 3 branches of government, in 507 BCE. And I was taught it's a free country. That's a mantra that most kids probably heard about America before they even got to school. The reality, however, is that 17 countries are considered freer than the United States today. The Human Freedom Index ranks America number 15 on its global list. It's based on government size, religion, labor, trade, rule of law, and basic freedoms such as movement and association. And the average is pulled up significantly by economic freedoms. On personal freedom, the country ranks about number 26. So how else can I ruin your day? Oh, I know, this is my favorite. Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist. Lincoln is often put on a pedestal as one of the greatest opponents of slavery for freeing the slaves with his Emancipation Proclamation in 1862. In fact, he struggled with conflicting and ambiguous views on slavery during his entire presidential career. He only wanted to do what would make the Union stronger. Remember, this was a time when the Confederate States had split from the Union and we were at war. In his own words, he said, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race," he said, "I do because I believe it helps to save the Union." I don't remember reading that in any of my history books. Truthfully, the Emancipation Proclamation at first freed only the slaves from the Confederate state, an inducement for them to come back to the Union. The Emancipation Proclamation was limited first to slaves in rebel states, and then only where word was received about it. It wasn't until June 19, 1865, nearly 3 years after it was issued, that Union soldiers rode into Galveston, Texas, to tell America's last remaining slaves that they were free. The 13th Amendment, supposedly ending slavery, still allowed forced labor as punishment for a crime. Convict leasing existed in every southern state for decades after the Civil War. Tens of thousands of Black Americans who committed no real crimes except not being able to find work were kidnapped off the streets, convicted in informal local courts for vagrancy, issued fines they couldn't pay, and sold to businesses to work in mines, in timber yards, farms, and railroads, in conditions often worse than slavery. Is it any wonder then if everything we learned about slavery, about Black and brown Americans, is based on a lie, that racial injustice persists in this country 244 years after the founding of it, and 150 years after the Civil War ended and the Emancipation Proclamation was signed? Why would they lie to us in the history books? Oh, I understand the whole thing about winners writing the history, but didn't the North win the war between the states, and weren't they against slavery? Shouldn't history have included justice and equity along with emancipation? Well, yes, it should, but the lies didn't stop there, and they haven't stopped since. But I'm going to stop here. No, I'm just going to pause here while you ponder my first question. How can we seek truth if we don't recognize the lies we've been taught? And when I come back to it, I want to respond to my second question. Can we handle the truth? But for now, my generosity report. I love that the first item on my generosity report is from one member of the congregation outing another for his good works. An anonymous member wrote to me saying, not only is Roy Brake, who is the chair of our building committee, still taking care of our church building, but he has also started helping East Side Community Assistance with some of the building issues that they have. I would like to see him acknowledged for that. Well, folks, you heard it here first. Thank you, Roy, for your generosity both to this congregation and to our partner in social justice, East Side Community Assistance. And my second report also includes East Side. Every quarter we share a part of the plate collection, and this week we mailed a check to East Side Community Assistance for $345, and they sent an email back saying they appreciate it so much it will help them in their work. My reading today is titled, Your Life Matters. It's written by a former editor of the Unitarian Universalist World, the quarterly magazine that goes to all members. Kenny Wiley, who wrote it, is a black man. And he said, most of us Unitarian Universalists are here because we felt welcome here. At last. Some of us were too agnostic somewhere else. Some of us weren't vindictive enough somewhere else. We were too working class somewhere else. Or we were too lesbian somewhere else. We were too nerdy somewhere else. Too introverted somewhere else. Too gay married somewhere else. Many of us are here because this faith and the people in it affirmed, you may not be perfect, but your life matters just the same. And he continues, that's what's on the line now. Though racism and posthumous victim blaming through silence and bullets and indifference and vilification, black people are being told that our lives do matter, or that they matter only conditionally. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Black people are being told that our lives do not matter, or that they matter only conditionally. Black lives matter if we were educated, if we are respectful, and if, sometimes not even then, do our lives matter. But right now, he says, we as Unitarian Universalists are being called to act. We are being called by our ancestors, those who demanded that we help end slavery, that we fight for suffrage, that we join the struggle to end Jim Crow, that we listen to and honor black power. Guided by that enduring, unfulfilled promise of the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, ours is a faith that is said or worked to say to those who have been marginalized, you are a woman and your life matters. You are gay or lesbian and your life matters. You are transgender and your life matters. You are bisexual and your life matters. You have a disability and your life matters. You were not loved as a child and your life matters. You struggle with depression and your life matters. Right now we are being called by our ancestors, by our principles, by young black activists across the country to promote and affirm. You are young and black and your life matters. You stole something and your life matters. You have been taught to fear and your life matters. The police are releasing your criminal record and your life matters. They are calling you a thug and your life matters. Our ancestors, principles, and fellow humans are calling on us to promote, affirm with deeds and words, Black lives matter. This is usually the time in the service when we have a communion of names and milestones, stories that are told in this community that live in the hearts and mind of others. I've received no new stories this week, so I suggest as we meditate with one another in a moment of silence that we consider the reading that I just gave. Consider that Black lives matter. And let us keep that thought in our minds and hearts as we have a musical interlude. Nisha? Do you remember the scene from A Few Good Men when Jack Nicholson shouts at Tom Cruise, "You can't handle the truth"? Oh, if you saw it, you remember it. When I watched that movie on my DVR, I often stop the recording, back it up, and watch it again. You can't handle the truth. I think that's what's happening today. What's been happening for a long, long time in this country. There are people today who can't handle the truth, who find it more comfortable to continue to promote the lies we were taught in school, in our families. Remember when I left off my first response, I asked if the North fought the Civil War to end slavery and the North won. Why didn't it write history so that slavery actually ended, so that former slaves and their dependents got equity and justice? I only recently had that explained to me in a way that made me understand it all too clearly. I recently heard one of the many recordings on YouTube by a black ACLU lawyer named Jeffrey Robinson. Remember that name. Copy it down, if you will. I'll say it again later. Jeffrey Robinson. He explained it like this. The North won the war, but the South won the peace. Robinson says our history has been stolen from us. That's a nice way of saying we've been lied to. By us, he means all of us, whites and blacks and Native Americans, immigrants from Asia and South and Central America. And he adds, the truth beneath the lie is so ugly that it is difficult to look at it. Can you handle the truth? This country was founded on white supremacy. Most of the men who wrote or signed off on the document that said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, these men owned slaves and never meant to include them in what they were writing. This country was able to grow and prosper only because of the existence from its beginning of free labor, slave labor. After the Civil War, Lincoln got his Union back and slaves got their freedom. Reparations were made to former slaves for a few years, but the southern states who rejoined the Union needed cheap labor to regain what they had lost, to rebuild the cotton industry that was about 60% of what we manufactured and exported. And that's when they introduced laws about vagrancies and about loitering to give the police a reason to arrest black men. And then they made laws that prison labor could be rented out to plantation owners. Many of the men returned to what they had done before the war, many times to the same plantation that they had been freed from. After the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan was invented to thwart the laws of emancipation. It was extremely successful in keeping black people from complaining too much. Other laws were created and put on the books to counter the freedoms that had been won. The first Civil Rights Act was passed in 1875, giving black men the right to vote, and there were 700,000 new voters in the land. But that law was rescinded 2 years later, and the black voting population dropped below 70,000. In his book, 1984, George Orwell noted, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." Our government has always been complicit in this kind of control. Our government has been complicit in stealing our true history. As part of the Reconstruction after the war, the government gave land grants and money grants to people to start their own businesses, to white men. The same grants were given to black men, but they were expected to pay $100 for their piece of the land. That was big money in those days. Few had it. These kinds of laws have existed for a long time. These kinds of laws continue to be made today. When Social Security was created after the Great Depression, farm workers and domestics were not included because these were the jobs available to blacks. After World War II, when the GI Bill was created to help returning soldiers get an education, the privilege was extended to white soldiers only. Most white Americans built their wealth generation by owning their homes, improving them, selling them, and getting better homes. My family has such a history, and I always thought it was because we were so hardworking, so clever in parlaying what little we had into more. But after World War II, new suburbs were built with free money under a federal law that said these properties could never be sold to blacks. It was called redlining. When I bought my first house in Texas some 25 years ago, I was assured by the realtor that I would not have to worry about my neighbors. Supposedly, this kept property values high because black families brought those values down. I found another realtor. I mean, look where they choose to live. They choose to live where white America tells them to live. If they did happen to make a bid on a redlined property, banks simply lost their paperwork long enough to get a proper buyer on the books. As you go through history, the real history, every step forward made by the black and brown communities resulted in new laws, new roadblocks created by whites. The same is true of the Native Americans. Jim Crow laws. When do you suppose the monuments to Confederate heroes that are creating such controversy now were built? Right after the Civil War? No. In the 1920s and 30s, and again in the 1960s and 70s. These were warnings created when blacks had won some new freedom. Don't get too big, they said. This is still a country that is built on white supremacy. Oh, and what about Brown versus the Board of Education? Wasn't that a step forward for black Americans? You can believe that if you want to. It's not what you believe, it's how you choose to hold it. But the Supreme Court ruled and the white supremacists fought back. 16 years after the Brown ruling, the federal government had to sue the state of Texas for refusing to integrate most of its schools. In 1970, a federal judge near Longview placed nearly the entire state under court order and threatened sanctions against defiant school districts, resulting in one of the largest series of desegregation orders in the nation's history. And that law remained in place for 48 years because the state of Texas made it clear that once it was repealed, they intended to return to segregation in the schools. The state of Texas. Can you handle the truth? This is probably one of the most difficult services I have ever put together. Not because I had to admit that I had always thought of myself as a seeker of truth and failed to see those lies, but because I do not have the time to share with you all of the lies that I have uncovered in my research leading up to this service. Because I don't have time to talk about the attempted and nearly successful genocide of the original people in this country, the brutal treatment of Japanese citizens during World War II, the hypocrisy of the McCarthy era, the subjugation of women, the treatment of South and Central American families who have sought safety and justice in the United States in the last 3.5 years under the Trump administration, the tax cuts that already help rich and balance the budget on the backs of the already poor, because my time is limited to what truth that you can handle in 60 minutes or less. So I'm asking you to do this. This is your assignment this week, should you choose to accept it, and I hope you do. Go to YouTube. In the search box, type the name Jeffrey Robinson. It will be on your screen. Then choose from at least a half dozen speeches he has given in the last 5 years. I'm putting these speeches on the bookshelf in the Courier, in our newsletter. If you are white and don't feel responsibility for white supremacy, listen to these videos. Watch just one of these videos. If you are black or brown or Native American and have been told you aren't successful because you haven't pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps, listen to these videos. Watch these videos because you need to understand the lies in your history. You need to understand they are not your fault. It is only your fault if you do nothing about them today, and I will say more about that when we stop to breathe together. But for now, please join me in singing hymn number 151, I Wish I Knew How. This is not an old spiritual, though it sounds like a spiritual. This is a song written in 1963, just before the civil rights movement of that decade, and it still has great meaning for many people today, whatever the color of their skin.
I wish I knew how would it feel to be free. I wish I could break all these chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I could say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love in my heart. Remove all the hearts that still keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree everyone wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I can do. No, I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. No, I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I soared to the sun and looked down at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels to be free. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels to be free.
Let me take a minute to handle some business. Reneel, I know you have to go to work today, and we ran a little long in this recording. Do you have to leave now? Because we can fill in. Okay, I'll talk fast, and we'll finish the last hymn, and then you can go. Thank you so much. So my third response starts with the question, is there meaning without truth? We have certainly tried to create such meaning. We've tried to explain away our history or made it go away by believing the lies. We have listened to the code words and believed them, disregarded the fact that war on drugs really meant war on blacks, meant put blacks in prison but let whites go for the same crime, that make America great again clearly meant make America white again. Keep out the thugs, the terrorists, the Muslims, the criminals, the people that want to destroy America means there are becoming more of them than there are of us, and you should be very afraid. Fear is what is driving the controversies today, probably what has always been driving them. Fear that you give someone else the privileges that you have always had because you're light complexioned and you never had to acknowledge that they were privileges not offered to everyone, that you will have to take less for yourself. Fear is what is driving what looks to be like a zero-sum game. There's only so much to go around, and those other people want my share. If that's the meaning you find in the truth and lies you uncover, then you haven't really been listening, and you don't really care. We are in a place today that Walt Whitman described as after times, that space between what has gone before and what is yet to come. James Baldwin brought the phrase back when he talked about all the starts and endings to civil rights he experienced in his lifetime. In the past few years, we have witnessed after times over and over again with the killing of black men by white policemen. And each time the outrage builds and explodes, it is tamped down with some new news, some crisis that is more concerning, or just plain justice fatigue. But the killing of George Floyd has released an aftertimes that has lasted longer than most, has a possible chance of making a difference, making a change. It must be important, or would the president be sending federal troops, soldiers trained in killing, who are meant to protect the rights of Americans, to shut down peaceful protests and create violence of a different kind in the streets? Unitarian Universalists have been challenged by their faith community to help destroy the institutions of white supremacy. If you have been paying attention to the lies, if you have been seeking the truth in our history, you know it is not going to be easy. We will let it slip away once again until one of the people who are caught in the middle is someone we know, someone we hold dear. I don't know all the answers. I only know my response. I hope not. I sincerely hope not. Because the next step is a big one. The next step is crucial to our owning our own futures, and we can't do it alone. So let us promise to do it together. Let us take one more step together. And let us sing our closing hymn, number 168, One More Step.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone. Take one more step, one more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Our chalice has burned as a sign of our togetherness, even when we are apart, as a sign for believing that we want truth and meaning in our lives and are willing to go after it, to seek it, to use it for good. I extinguish the chalice because I know you take it in your hearts and your minds. My benediction this morning was written by Jim McGaw, but I own his sentiments. So when I say the words that were his first, when I repeat them, they are mine. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself and others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice. I mean go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace, damn it. Go in peace.